The beaches of Normandy. A region forever etched in the American psyche as the place where the Allies first breached Hitler's fortress Europe and began the liberation from Nazi control. Though most Americans will never set foot here, these D-Day sites are still very much engraved in our cultural memory. It doesn't matter if you're a boomer, Gen Xer, millennial, or Gen Z, this ground is revered because we all share a connection to it. Whether through a grandparent, neighbor, uncle, or friend, every American is impacted by the hellish events that happened here 80 years ago. Today, most of the greatest generation is gone, yet their legacy lives on in memory of their deeds. In a few months' time, militaries from across NATO, along with World War II enthusiasts, will descend on these beaches to commemorate the sacrifices of so many. And this being the 80th anniversary, it promises to be quite an experience. So to help you get ready for this worthy event, I present some first-hand perspectives of the sights and sounds of this beautiful and historic region, the site of the longest day. In this Then and Now tribute to our World War II heroes, I'll show you both ground and aerial footage from 1944 and the present day. We'll cover Omaha Beach, Pointe du Hoc, the Normandy American Cemetery, Utah Beach, and give you a sense of the hedgerows and causeways between the beachheads and the renowned inland towns. Without further ado, let's go. I've been fortunate enough to visit the Normandy terrain twice now, and I find it simply incredible that so much of it retains the same texture it had in 1944. We've all seen the desaturated war photos depicting the hellscape those beaches became, but for those who have walked the sand, the paradox of this place is immediately apparent. It is beautiful. Soft, golden sand and teal-colored water make for an idyllic holiday scene. But for the men landing here on June 6, 1944, the beauty and tranquility were overshadowed by gnawing machine gun fire, concussive mortars, and the cries of their wounded brothers as the Allies breached the first defense of a long besieged continent. It was surreal to walk this terrain. Looking out from the casements, you realized just how vulnerable the soldiers were as they had to cross nearly 400 meters of sand from their landing craft to the first point of cover. This while being continuously exposed to entrenched field guns, artillery, and machine gun nests, all neatly obscured from the targeting efforts of Allied naval bombardment. The German defense took full advantage of the elevated terrain, inflicting heavy casualties from their dug-in positions as they attempted to prevent the invaders from gaining access inland via 5 drainage ditches. I remembered reading about Rommel's Atlantic Wall with its extensive mines and underwater obstacles.
Within steel and concrete emplacements, 4 years in the making, the Germans have amassed every known weapon of defense. Whether those weapons are enough to stop the Allied onslaught will be proven in the struggle that lies ahead.
As well as the careful consideration taken by the Allies to attack at the right time of day, having weighed the impacts of other factors, light, moon cycles, tides, and such. But reading it and seeing it are two very different things.
soil of Western Europe. Another of the great decisive battles of world history has been joined. This is the day for which free people long have waited. This is D-Day.
The American Military Cemetery is situated just up the hill from Omaha Beach and is an awe-inspiring sight where more than 9,000 military dead lie in rest, most of them killed during D-Day assault. Row after row of pristine white crosses aligned in precise military formation, this 172-acre site was first established by the U.S. Army only 2 days after D-Day. A visit to this site is overwhelming. The volume of graves and the proximity to the battlefield lends an inescapable gravitas that is a needful element in reflecting on the cost of this war. Point du Hoc is only 4 miles west of Omaha Beach, and with 6 155mm field guns, was likely the most dangerous battery on the Normandy coastline. As you can see, this is a formidable battery with large concrete casements stationed atop 100-foot-high cliffs, nestled into a promontory which optimized its field of view and tactical range. An aerial view of this point still testifies to the Allied bombing raids that were conducted in an unsuccessful effort to destroy this battery. The task of assaulting Point du Hoc fell to the now famous U.S. 2nd Ranger Battalion. These men volunteered for the specialized training at the British Commando School and assaulted the gun battery via amphibious landing and then scaling the sheer cliffs hand over hand to force a German retreat. It's a harrowing story that is well worth digging into before seeing it firsthand. Utah Beach. Our visit to Utah Beach was uniquely fun because we were able to see it at the peak of both tides. The difference between the two was striking. While gathering seashells as the tide came in, we observed just how quickly the water can move upshore. And then in the evening, as the tide was low, it revealed just how easily underwater structures can be obscured. Unlike Omaha, the Utah Beach landings were far more easily accomplished. setting it up to be a major landing port for troops and materiel early in the stages of the invasion. In fact, 24,000 troops had landed on Utah by the end of D-Day, and there were fewer than 200 casualties. Just on the opposite side of the Utah Beach bluffs is stationed a beautiful military museum that is very well appointed and worth visiting. Its size and displays are just right for the family to get a sense of what occurred in this region during the invasion period. The entire region is replete with museums and monuments, all of which are worth seeing. But of course, there's only so much time to do so. Studying history from books can be a brutal undertaking. History needs to be seen and interacted with in order to really understand it. This is especially true when it comes to war history. Maps, pictures, terrain, geography, all these bring the facts and figures off the page and into reality for our minds to comprehend. As we drove between the beaches and the towns, it became immediately apparent how the amphibious effort was heavily reliant on the success of the airborne portion of the invasion. If the men were to successfully get off the beaches and move inland, they needed to cross vast low-lying fields that had been flooded by the Germans and were connected inland by only 5 causeways. The task of the U.S. airborne divisions was to secure key terrain to support the beach landings and open a path inland.
More than 11,000 planes spearheading the attack. Paratroopers landed in Normandy behind the coastal defenses. Landings made with timing and precision, perfected only through scores of rehearsals.
The town of St. Mary-Église, in particular, was deemed strategic in that effort. To secure this key terrain, the soldiers had to contend with the now infamous hedgerows, which are ubiquitous in the Cotentin region. Now, to my American mind, reading about hedgerows just doesn't seem to connect as a big deal, but seeing these 4-foot tall mounds of earth out of which grew dense and impassable trees, brush, and hedges provided a perspective I could have not gained by reading alone. In peaceful times, these would make the perfect border to a field of crops, but for ground maneuver units, these hedgerows transformed every farmer's field into a new battleground, with ample concealment for all manner of rifle and machine gun positions. The scenes from so many war movies instantly made more sense, as I understood the precarious position in which the paratroopers found themselves from their scattered landings, separated from each other across these natural barriers. The World War era levied incredible costs to human life and flourishing on our planet. And while we'd like to think that those days are past and that problem is solved, It's only been 80 years, and we are already seeing the resurgence of the kind of ideas that gave rise to such atrocities. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel overwhelmed by how quickly evil is advancing in our world today. I often feel disheartened and powerless in the face of it. This is why I think visits to places like Normandy are still so fruitful, because perhaps we can take counsel from those bold men of D-Day. Theirs was a generation of action, of men and women who saw what needed to be done and then did it. And though the enormity of the task was daunting, they recognized the cumulative power that results from individual people taking action within their own field of fire. Their efforts coalesced into the tidal wave that swept up onto the Normandy shores and inland, all the way to Berlin. Most of them have flown west, but I'm old enough to remember visiting with some of them. I certainly can't speak for them, but their lives bear bold testament to the idea that no one person can change the world, but everyone can change something about the world. Their actions teach us not to stop at merely seeing a need, but to take action to meet that need. I think they would tell us that we must do what must be done to stop the evil in our own corner of the world, in our community, in our neighborhood, in our families, in our own hearts. Who knows? If we take their advice, perhaps our efforts will be as theirs, greater than the sum of its parts.